It was a freezing, sleety evening just before Christmas when Jack pulled up his truck across the road from a shabby, squat, thatched cottage and parked on the gravel lane next to a few old trucks and tractors. It was blowing a hoolie, as Jeremiah would say, and Jack, huddled in his coat, ran for the door, above which a lonely lamp hanging from a wire was tossed about, casting dim light into the shadows. It was a freezing, sleety evening just before Christmas when Jack pulled up his truck across the road from a shabby, squat, thatched cottage and parked on the gravel lane next to a few old trucks and tractors. It was blowing a hoolie, as Jeremiah would say, and Jack, huddled in his coat, ran for the door, above which a lonely lamp hanging from a wire was tossed about, casting dim light into the shadows. Through the powerful gusts of wind which rattled the shutters, he heard sounds of a fiddle and uproarious laughter coming from within. The sign with the name and a picture of a stone circle was swinging wildly on the plaintive chains, and a pale light glimmered through its only small and rather grimy window. By the time he had crossed the road, the music had ceased, and next moment he stood outside a well-weathered door, which looked like it had suffered a few centuries of use. In its heyday, it had been painted white and ornamented with black cast-iron hinges. Now, having rusted, they creaked lethargically when he pushed it open. As Jack stepped inside, he felt as if he had fallen back in time 1 century at the very least, or had even tumbled into his favourite fantasy story. A smell of tobacco and pine smoke lingered in the air of the quaint room, which was not much larger than Jack's kitchen. Inside it was warm and not too bright, for although the cottage had electricity supply, it was usually lit up by a few candles and a roaring fire, which infused the wall plaques and horse brasses with a soft glow. On the mantelpiece, a single candle in a twisted pewter candlestick shed its gentle light on a display of copper ale jugs and twigs of holly spangled with bright berries. Artfully sprinkled with flour and sugar to give them a festive feel, they were the only Christmas decoration. To one side of the fireplace stood a brass scuttle full of coal, and chopped logs were neatly stacked at the other. The wind whistled in the chimney, and the fire crackled, and with an occasional fizzle it spat out a burning ember onto the well-worn hearthrug, around which sat the colourful all-male clientele. 3 generations of local folk, about a dozen of them. The old-timers and their sons, had been paying close attention to a tall, thin man with a pipe and a deerstalker hat. But now, as Jack made his way towards the bar, their characterful faces, as one, turned to observe him. A man of no great height, but stout enough, groaned discontentedly as he arose from his seat by the fireside and shuffled towards the bar. A pair of chunkily knitted woolen socks of orangey-brown colour pulled up to his knees and matching slippers on his feet, and his well-upholstered chest and belly were adorned by a long apron with a cartoon depiction of a charging bull, jets of steam erupting from his nostrils, and above, a caption, "The Boss." And there was no disputing the fact, for the tapster was Jeremiah Doble, the proprietor himself. Jack ordered a pint of ale brewed on the premises and took a chair a little aside from the gathering, while the boss returned to the group and sat again by the fire, grimly prodding it with a poker now and then. The music did not recommence. The fiddler put his violin down, and everyone soon stopped gawking at Jack and redirected their eyes at the man in a deerstalker hat, waiting for the continuation of the story. The man pulled on his pipe, and then he spoke, and when he had finished, he was succeeded by the others. And although Jack, from where he sat, could not see all their faces, he had no problem hearing them all, and as the evening progressed, he found the whole thing increasingly enthralling.
Well, old Williams was gutted. The veterinarian said that he'd done all he could. The mare may pull through, he said, but the foal had no hope. Too weast, he was. That's what he said, and then 'twas going dimpsy-like, and he'd goed on his way. But the old man was desperate aveared for his mare, he was, and he got into such a stew that he took bad. cruel queasy with his innards, and he'd girt big bladder, the size of cackleberry, on his foot and all, so he clopped to his bed. At Cockleart, 'twas all mizzle and rimy like, but he got out of his bed anyhow, and he donned his clathers and hobbled across his courtlage to the stable, and not expecting a cheery sight, and not in the leastest inkling was he prepared for what he'd see next, and to be sure, none of ye can guess neither.
The storyteller leaned forward.
Right ageast he was, I tell ye, for he'd seen his mare, and as sound as a bell she was, and wait for it, the foal, as bright as a daisy, stood next to her, and there was fresh water in the trough, and the fodder trough was filled with finest oats and hay and all. But the mare's mane was all braided into them little pigtails, and what's more, now she had hairbands in her tail. Well, as he'd seed all that, old Williams was in such a flusteration that he clear forgot his gubbins was queasy. He daggled then like a hare into the house, and straightway he'd tell his dummun to put out bowls of milk and cream for the gentry, 'cause 'twas them all right, the ones what done it, and so chuffed he was that after his nummit he'd go to limewash his linny, he did.
Odds winderikins, and did he tell all that to the veterinarian?
Sure and sure that he did, and the veterinarian turned up to see for himself. I's warrant that flabbergasted he was. I was there by the peep o' day I was, came to deliver the straw bales, so I seed for myself, and he looked and smoothed his beard like, and he said, "Well, Williams, never in me born days have I see the likes of this, and I wouldn't have believed such a marvel, but I see now, you don't need me here. Ye have help from the forces, which be beyond me reckoning." That's what he said, and he stood there looking at the mare, and her mane was all braided like.
The storyteller closed his eyes.
And I can see it, clear as noonday, her mane all braided, and herbans in her tail.
He reopened his eyes, and after slowly scanning the present, had concluded with meaningful nod,
"And that be as true as what I see your lot here now."
Odds, I believe ye.
I still remember when old Ignatius had broken his leg. Poor Blid fell off the ladder when he was doing a bit of daking, and next morning his darter found 3 shiny gold coins on the hearthrug, and that paid for the doctor, and for fixing the roof, and summat was left over to buy a key, and all.
Aye, that happens, Ert,
said a gruff voice.
Them can be helpful every whips and while if they take a fancy to ye, but I should not trust 'em anyhow. For my part, I'd give 'em naught if I were ye, and I can tell you something, they can entangle ye in them dark spells, so ye be courting them glamour, and then they transmuggerify ye into a heathen. 'Cause unpredictable them be, and with them you never know. Them thicky pests have meddled with our keys, and the milk came out all Apriled, it did." "Heathen mithen,"
someone guffawed.
"I suspect 'twas your Zauerzab dummun what curdled it.
Don't let thicky mommet aneast the pail next time. Or maybe 'twas your own Anson Fizzug had done it."
"Say what you like, what do you know?"
the gruff voice went on.
"But I'd give 'em naught but a wide berth, I would."
"And ye may do as ye please,"
rejoined the deerstalker hat.
"As they say, naught for naught, summit for summit. 'Tis your choice. Ye give 'em naught, and, save for the April milk, ye vang naught. But us treat 'em good people with respect. Why shouldn't us be Johnick with 'em? 'Tis naught but a common courtesy. Them mites have always been good with us, and I swear that in return they may help us with our crops, them do." "That's right. I've heard they can protect your crops from hail, and in the olden days before the machines they even did your threshing for you,"
said a lad in a black hoodie, who until then had been twiddling with his mobile phone.
"But I'm that mismazed at who makes them rings in them fields."
"Why, that be them flying saucers, boy, them globes of light. I've seed 'em,"
said a man in a tweed waistcoat.
"There's no such thing as flying saucers. What ye seed was the planet Venus, or moonlight on the coal fields,"
said a man who'd managed to look totally out of place, thanks to an electric blue beret sitting jauntily askance his head.
"I have eyes to see, and I know what I seed," insisted the tweed, "and 'twas neither of them. Besides, I also seed them once when I was on a plane. Ye say cabbages can grow thousands of feet up in the air?" All right, maybe you'd seed summit, but I say it be them also what makes them rings. Them tricksy pixies and fairy folk, said another voice.
He was immediately corrected with,
Eden pixies, them be piskies. Aye, them be the same as Pobbleveen, them be. Oh, whatever, pixies or piskies or your bean critters.
Yer be a bean critter yourself. I said Pobbleveen. That's the name of the little people in the west.
Call 'em veens or beans or mushy peas for all I care. I'm sure 'tis all the same to them. But heed this, if ye ever chance to see 'em, then run and don't look back, or mark my word, they will condiddle ye into them thicky world.
The voice sank to a gruff whisper.
And hold her ye in there, and ye'll be never seen here again.
Well, what I want to know is this. Where is that world of theirs? Asked the black hoodie.
Me Gadford telled me it be in some spirit world, gruffed the gruff.
That's 'cause in them days they didn't know about parallel realities, other dimensions like. That's where they live and they can travel between our worlds. That's why they can come and go as they please, said a lad in a blue hoodie who sat next to his black hoodied friend.
Well, we can't stop 'em, can't do naught about 'em. All we can do is turn out our coats and keep 'em out of sight.
Them varmints give me collywobbles, them do, and I have affixed the right sleeve of a shirt atop the door to stop 'em from getting in.
That don't work. You need to do that with your left stocking, you do. That'll cozen 'em.
Someone wolf whistled, and the gruff voice continued,
I say that be for the changeling, that be. You can try sticking a pin in the keyhole, but whatever you do, don't give 'em a chance to enchant ye, or you're a lost soul. Mind ye, the white hart'll lead you astray and all. Some had followed him, thinking they'd be going on an adventure. Adventure, my eye. He'd be the guardian of them world, he be, and if you go after him, you're a goner, and that be for sure.
I don't think ye need to worry anyhow. I'm sure they have better things to do than to bother with ye, said the man in a deerstalker hat, and someone agreed. By this time, the little window and the door were battered with hail, and the wind did not whistle in the chimney any longer, but was howling and wailing. The trees lining the Piper's Lane were creaking, swaying their bare branches like gnarled brown fingers as they were shaking off the last of their kexy leaves, and the whole cottage banged and rattled. A storm was whipping up upon them. Jack pulled his chair a little closer to the fire, and as he had done so, a scat of hail came down the chimney and landed onto the glowing coals with a hiss. The men were silent for a while, listening to the raging tempest as the turbulent elements outside were wreaking havoc. At length, the conversation was resumed.
Does anyone here remember when the schoolmaster was pisky-led on the moors? His dumman herself said so. Not pisky-led, but whiskey-led and sozzled as a wheelbarrow he was, someone replied. I know, 'cause he was sleeping it off in me barn. But if she had known the truth, Dickie Barrelly would have taken a smitcher to his head. That may be, but you can't deny that our Vady Zugs and the moorlands are a home to all sorts of devilry. And plenty as brimbleberries, them be. Them wished hounds, and thicky, black, hairy hand what grabs the drivers. That has been seen by many, and recently, mind.
The electric blue beret sneered condescendingly.
Fairies? Pixies? Hairy hands? Figs, what a superstitious lot you all are,
he said slowly, like a headmaster making a point to a backward student.
Believing in all them old wives' tales. Ridiculous! Ye talk as if it was still 19th century.
Dash my buttons, and is it not? Which one may it be then, may I ask?
Someone said, and Jack wasn't sure if he was joking or not. Ignoring him, the beret went on.
And as for them rings in the fields, have you not heard about them two old fellers? They make 'em by trampling the wheat with wooden boards, them do. And cruel fitty them both be. One of them fellers even had a photographic memory. Don't understand how he could forget some simple things, but make no mistake. He shook his finger. Crafty buggers them both be.
You know, all them years, Vicky Dummons didn't hear a dicky bird and didn't miss 'em, not once, when they was sneaking out every night during the summer months to make 'em rings. True, some things about 'em somehow just don't add up, but 'twas them, all right, the ones what done it. They said so themselves, and 'twas in all the papers, and on the wireless, and on the telly as well.
What a load of cobblers,
someone cried. Jack thought it was a good time to join in the debate.